we officially have Speculation Map version 2 from HN Nightmares for this year's event.
And we're going to be going ahead and breaking down all the details that you guys need to know coming up next. What's up everyone, and welcome back to the channel that takes you through the fog with probably an exciting day for most of us HHN fans, that being the official speculation map from HN Nightmares version 2 has just been released.
The way that we're going to break down the map for this video is by going clockwise around the park, because we actually have a new version or a new style for this version of the map. Taking a look at this version of the map, we can definitely see that we have quite a few changes from version 1 to version 2.
Not only are there houses that are listed here on the map, but we also have a few scare zones that made it here on the second version of this map. But we are going to be diving into the houses first, so let's go ahead and start off with the first one on the list being Demon Slayer. Now, Demon Slayer is a property that me and Steph are not really familiar with. We've never seen the show, but we've only heard good things of it. But the question is, if this does come true and it comes to fruition with HHN, what could this mean with the event?
Yeah, and we have seen a lot of conversation about how this is very unlikely. We don't know why it's very unlikely, but a lot of people are saying that they think this might be a code word for something else. So we'll just have to, wait and see until we get an official announcement. And if they do officially announce that this is coming to the event, we will definitely have to do our homework.
And headed back to the map, we're going to move on to our next house featured in the soundstage, which is the Exorcist Beliver. The Exorcist Beliver is a Blumhouse movie that is a sequel to the original Exorcist that looks like it's going to be featured at this year's event. But what's the question that we have on our minds is why this property, since the movie isn't set to release until mid-October?
Right, and this is a Blumhouse movie, so we think that this might be kind of taking the spot of the Blumhouse house. We normally have multiple properties within the Blumhouse house, but it seems like this year it'll just be The Exorcist, which is interesting because they have Insidious The Red Door and they have Megan coming out, so.
They have a couple of properties they're working on this year, and even Five Nights at Freddy's potentially being something. But if they were to just do The Exorcist, I'm okay with that. We're not crazy about Megan actually being at the event, so if it's just one Blumhouse property, sweet. However, I will say if they do decide to do The Believer and the movie hasn't come out, they might do something like they did back in 2017 with Saw, where they had a feature from that house be a teaser to the actual movie coming out, and we could see something along the lines with that where we get the original Exorcist and then have at the end of the house the sequel following being The Believer, like a teaser scene or something. But that's gonna be the next house, Exorcist Believer.
And the next house that we have on the map is Upchuck.
Yes, Upchuck, the house is going to be obviously at the event. We already know this. This was confirmed by Horror Nights, so as you can see from the map, it's going to be in a soundstage. That's all you need to know.
The next house that we have on the map is our first original, and this one is just a picture of what looks like a town and then a pentagram. On this version of the map, we have these little photos instead of a title or a word for the original, so it is a little bit harder to decipher what these actually mean, which is kind of exciting. But this one looks to be a town with like a pentagram over it, so maybe something relating to witchcraft or something like that.
Yeah, we're not really the greatest deciphers when it comes to like pictures or anything, which is what we prefer compared to like having the titles. But we were looking up, and of course, like having that pentagram, it could be like witchcraft in a sense, and maybe have like a redemption to what last year's like witch house was supposed to be, which we had Spirits of the Coven, didn't really do well with the fans. Maybe we can actually get the version that we hope to have had with the witches and being something based on like the old like folk like Salem witch trials type of thing and stuff. So that's what we feel like it could be, but we really don't know when it comes to these originals. It's always up in the air based on these pictures. But what do you guys think? Are we getting a witchcraft type of house? Also, next Tuesday at 8:30 p.m., we will be hosting our live stream, which is going to be going ahead and breaking down this entire speculation map more in detail. So, of course, we'll talk more about the houses, the scare zones, and the layout and logistics of this speculation map, all coming up on that live stream. So we hope to see you guys there because we have lots to talk about. And headed back to the map and moving on to our next house, which is the last soundstage house we have featured. It's another original featuring a picture of a dragon and a castle. Now, it is an original house, so it's not Game of Thrones, but this could mean one step closer to potentially having a Game of Thrones type of house. So what we see obviously on this map and this photo in general is a dragon and a castle, so maybe some medieval times type of house. We could have something like Nightingales related in a sense, or even like something around that lore where we go back in time to that. But what could this mean besides that? You know, I mean, obviously we have dragons, we have castles, but that's all I can see basically on this.
I would definitely love to have Nightingales be involved because we had Blood Pit, we had, I forget the other one, but but we know that like Nightingales are something that reoccurs at the event and in different periods of time. So it'd be really cool to see that in like medieval times. Moving forward on the map, we have a very interesting one. Now this one just says top secret, but it also does not have an asterisk. So we believe it might be an IP because it doesn't look to be an original, but it just says top secret. The question is, if this is an IP, then why is Horror Night Nightmares keeping this a secret? Why don't they want us to know what is speculated to be here?
Yeah, that is the question that we're asking. And we do have a couple of theories, and we're going to save some of those for the live stream because we can go on and on about exactly what they mean. But one of them we'll talk about is Stranger Things or even Five Nights at Freddy's. These are obviously IPs that could be featured at the event. We've heard a lot of talks going on in the community about Stranger Things and Five Nights at Freddy's. So we'll go ahead and play along with the game. We'll mention it. We'll say like it could potentially be that, and they might want to keep that a secret. However, though, if it's Stranger Things, I don't see it being in the Fast and Furious location.
Yeah, I don't like that location for really either of these or any big IP. That location wouldn't be great as like a big IP location.
Yeah, so there might be something else that they're referring to with this. And like I said, we have plenty of different theories that we'll talk about in our live stream coming up.
Headed back to the map, we are on to our next original house, which again is another photo, and it looks to be a tent with a cloud or dust or smoke behind it.
Now, this is an original house, and it does seem to be kind of like a circus tent or maybe even like a fair type of tent vibe thing. We're not really sure exactly what this is, but let's play along with it being like circus themed. So we might have clowns kind of featured in a sense, and it being an original, they can just play around with the idea of clowns or maybe go into a circus. Not really sure about this one.
My question is if it is a circus or clown themed house, why is there a big like smoke or dust
Some cloud
plume behind?
Not sure.
I don't know what that would even stand for.
Yeah, maybe the tent's on fire, and that's what's symbolizing the tent we're gonna go through. It's gonna be on fire.
I hope not.
And continuing with our motion around the park, we come up to our next house, which is the last original, and it is a face of something with two horns sticking out of its head.
Like with the other originals on this map, this could really be anything. It could be something related to devils or demons or emojis. I don't know.
An emoji house. Yeah, honestly, I think out of all the originals and the symbols that we see, this is the one we have least any idea what it could potentially be. It's an original house. It's some face, little horns. That's pretty much all we can say about this one.
Moving back to the conversation of IPs, our next house on the list is a very highly anticipated one, which is The Last of Us. And based on this map, it does look like it is going to be the video game version, as it does say Naughty Dog, The Last of Us. So not the HBO version, which is fine. We still are really excited to see this on the map.
Yeah, we were really hoping for, of course, the HBO one because that means a contract with Universal and HBO and Warner Brothers and having some other IPs potentially be listed for future events. However, the show version of The Last of Us was very similar to what the video game was. And now the video game has 2 parts to it, so I wonder if this is just based on part 1 and we may get a part 2 later on. But we'll be talking more about The Last of Us because obviously this is also Scarezone featured. But other than that, highly anticipated The Last of Us coming to the event, potentially because it is on the spec map. So, and moving on to our final house that we have featured on the second version of HN Nightmare's spec map. It is Universal Classic Monsters Paris. Now, as of currently, this is Steph and I's, of course, most anticipated one since it has to deal with the classic monsters, and we love the classic monsters, but it says Paris. So it's not referring to just like a specific monster. This is actually a location. Now, obviously, if you go with the classic monsters, which monsters are featured with Paris? You got Hunchback of Notre Dame, and you got the Phantom.
And we're very excited for this, and I'm personally really excited to see the scenery in a setting in Paris, if this is a house. So with, you know, Phantom, you have the really pretty scenes of the theater and everything, and then you could also have the catacombs, which would be really creepy.
Yeah, if they, and this is something that we're just theorizing, if they have this whole bigger story to tell when it comes to the classic monsters, and we've been seeing Dracula featured in, and now I know we're big fans of Dracula, but you of course have the Hunchback of Notre Dame celebrating 100 years. You have the Phantom of the Opera, which is celebrating its last, well, I wouldn't really say celebrating, but it just had its last showing featured in Broadway. So of course they're gonna play homage to those characters, but with the catacombs being in Paris and stuff, could see Dracula popping in there in the catacombs and all that stuff. So who knows? We can get some scary vibes, but I think this is gonna be one of the most beautiful houses that we've seen at the event, and I cannot wait to see what they have for us. So there's all the houses that we have featured for the second version of this year's speculation map. However, we are not done just yet since we actually have scare zones featured on this map. There are only 2 out of the 5 listed, but none other. We're gonna go and dive into them, starting with the one in New York being, of course, The Last of Us.
Now, this would be an IP scare zone, which we did not have any IP scare zones last year, so that is something of note. But I think this would be a great location for this scare zone. We know that New York is an area that we both really love as a scare zone, and I think it would be awesome as The Last of Us.
Yeah, I mean, New York is their larger area to feature a scare zone, and they usually put their bigger IP scare zones that they have had in the past in this location. We've obviously had zombies featured in this location, and to do that is kind of fitting. Now, The Last of Us obviously is kind of like, you know, based on like post-apocalyptic type of world, so they can maybe make the buildings look aged with like some projectors or things like that, have some like rundown cars in the streets, and of course people like zombies running around, some of the survivors. So I feel like this would be a perfect location for it. We've already talked about The Last of Us being a house, but this would be really cool to have it as a house and a scare zone. It would just be neat for them to have the entrance and exit right there, I would say.
You would think that they would want the entrance to The Last of Us to be one of the houses that's literally right there at New York.
Yeah.
But
now, it is just a speculation map, so
True.
things could change and all that stuff, but it does seem like they're on possible route for this to be a scare zone. And moving on to the final scare zone that we have featured on the map, and that's gonna be in Central Park, being Holidayz with a Z.
we did also get a speculation map from HN Nightmares for Hollywood, and one of the houses that is speculated is Holidayz in Hell. They did have a Holidayz house previously. I don't know if this is going to be exactly the same, but it seems like our scare zone is going to be similar to that.
Yeah, but how would they exactly do that in a scare zone? How would you feature different holidays? And you know, I've talked to Steph, like maybe this doesn't have to do with multiple holidays, maybe it's about one specific one, and I think the perfect one would be like a winter one, Christmas, obviously, especially in Central Park. They can go ahead and have like snow machines of it making like snow and like a Krampus type of vibe. But to have multiple ones, that is one of the smaller scare zones. It'd be really hard to feature all of them in one.
Yeah, and I honestly would prefer, if it is multiple holidays, I would prefer that as a house because then you get different rooms. Whereas if it's a scare zone, all the holidays are kind of mingling together, and I don't know if I would like that very much. So that is the speculation map for version 2, but there definitely is much more to talk about with this map. So that is why we will be having that live stream next Tuesday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern time. So definitely try to make it if you want to talk more about this map.
And if you guys enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, for it does help our channel, and also make sure to subscribe and have that bell icon turned on so you're notified when we do post these updated videos and much more leading up to this year's Halloween Horror Nights 2023. And until the next video, we can't wait to see you guys then, and like always, we'll catch you guys in the fog. Peace out, everybody.
Bye.